The small town of Ravensbrook was an escape for the Miller family, or so they thought. After years of city life, with its constant noise and stress, they longed for peace and quiet. The move was meant to be a fresh start, new opportunities, a slower pace, and a place where their son Tom could grow up surrounded by nature rather than concrete. The house they found was perfect, or at least it seemed that way on the surface. It was an old Victorian home, perched on the edge of a dense forest, with a large yard that Tom immediately fell in love with. The previous owners had left in a hurry, leaving behind much of the furniture and a sense of something unfinished. But the Millers didn't mind. It was a chance to make the house their own. As they settled in, they noticed the quiet. It was the kind of silence that the city never allowed, a deep, all-encompassing stillness. But there was something else, too, something just at the edge of hearing, like a faint echo of laughter carried on the wind. Tom was the first to mention it. He was 7, with a wild imagination that often got the better of him. "Mom, did you hear that?" he asked one afternoon as he played in the yard. "Hear what, sweetie?" Mrs. Miller replied, looking up from her gardening. "The laughing," Tom said, his brow furrowed. "It sounds like kids, but different." Mrs. Miller paused, listening, but all she could hear was the rustling of leaves in the trees and the distant call of a bird. "I don't hear anything, Tom. Maybe it's just your imagination." Tom shrugged, but the sound stayed with him. As the days passed, he heard it more often, soft, high-pitched laughter, like the giggles of children playing. But it wasn't the kind of laughter that made you want to join in. It was strange and settling, as if it were mocking him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, and the shadows in the yard grew long, Tom came running inside, his face pale. "Mom, Dad, I saw them," he exclaimed. "Saw who?" Mr. Miller asked, looking up from the book he was reading. "The kids. They were in the woods, laughing. But when I got close, they were gone." Mrs. Miller and her husband exchanged a glance. They had heard stories about the woods, tales from the locals, about strange happenings and sightings, things that no one could quite explain. But they had dismissed them as superstition, old wives' tales meant to scare outsiders. "There's no one in the woods, Tom," Mr. Miller said gently. "It's probably just the wind, or maybe some animals. You know how sound can play tricks on you out here." But Tom was insistent. "It wasn't the wind. They were real, Dad. I know it." That night, as Tom lay in bed, the laughter came again, closer this time. It seemed to echo through the walls surrounding him. He pulled the covers up to his chin, his heart racing, and squeezed his eyes shut, willing it to stop. But the laughter grew louder, filling his head until he thought he might go mad. When he finally fell asleep, his dreams were filled with shadows and cold, echoing laughter. The following day, Tom was more withdrawn than usual. His parents noticed, but they attributed it to the stress of the move and the adjustment to a new environment. After all, it wasn't easy for a child to leave behind friends and familiar surroundings. Tom, however, couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The laughter was always there, lurking just out of earshot during the day and growing louder at night. And then there were the shadows, dark figures that seemed to flit between the trees, always just out of sight. He tried to tell his parents again, but they dismissed it, telling him it was just his imagination. Tom began to doubt himself. Maybe he was just being silly, letting his fear get the better of him. But then, one afternoon, as he played alone in the yard, something happened that he couldn't ignore. It was a cloudy day, with a chill in the air that made the hairs on the back of Tom's neck stand on end. He was kicking a ball around, trying to keep himself entertained, when he heard it again, the laughter. But this time, it was different. It wasn't distant or faint. It was close, almost as if it were right beside him. Tom froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked around, but there was no one there. The yard was empty, the woods silent, but the laughter persisted, growing louder, more insistent. And then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw something, a shadow, moving at the edge of the trees. He turned, his breath catching in his throat. There, standing just inside the tree line, was a figure. It was small, about his height, and shrouded in darkness. Tom couldn't make out any features, but he could feel its eyes on him, cold and unblinking. The laughter echoed again, and this time Tom was sure it was coming from the figure. He took a step back, fear clawing at his insides. The figure didn't move, but the laughter grew louder, filling the air around him. Tom turned and ran, his legs pumping as fast as they could carry him. He didn't stop until he was inside the house, slamming the door shut behind him. He stood there panting, his heart racing, as the laughter slowly faded away. For the rest of the day Tom stayed close to his parents, afraid to be alone. He didn't tell them what he had seen, knowing they wouldn't believe him. But the fear gnawed at him, growing stronger with each passing hour. That night, the laughter returned, louder than ever. It echoed through the house, seeping into his dreams, twisting them into nightmares of dark figures and cold, hollow laughter. Days turned into weeks, and the laughter became a constant presence in Tom's life. It was always there, lurking in the background, a sinister reminder that something was very wrong. His parents noticed the change in him, how he had become quieter, more withdrawn, and how he refused to go outside alone. But no matter how much they pressed him, he wouldn't talk about what was bothering him. One afternoon, as Tom sat in his room, trying to distract himself with a book, there was a knock on his door. He looked up to see his mother standing in the doorway, a concerned expression on her face. "Tom, sweetie, can I talk to you?" she asked. Tom nodded, closing the book and setting it aside. Mrs. Miller sat down on the edge of the bed, reaching out to take Tom's hand. "I know something's been bothering you," she said gently. "You've been acting so different lately. Is there anything you want to tell me?" Tom hesitated, his gaze dropping to the floor. He wanted to tell her, to confide in her about the laughter and the shadowy figure in the woods. But he was afraid that she wouldn't believe him, or worse, that she would think he was crazy. "It's nothing, Mom," he said quietly. "I'm just tired, I guess." Mrs. Miller frowned, not convinced. "Tom, you know you can tell me anything, right? No matter what it is, I'll believe you." Tom looked up at her, searching her eyes for any sign of doubt, but all he saw was love and concern. Taking a deep breath, he decided to take a chance. "There's something in the woods," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Something that's been watching me. And it laughs, Mom, it laughs. But it's not a happy laugh. It's scary." Mrs. Miller's expression softened, but there was a flicker of worry in her eyes. "Sweetie, are you sure it's not just your imagination? Sometimes, when we're in a new place, it can be easy to let our minds play tricks on us." Tom shook his head vehemently. "No, it's real, Mom. I saw it. It was standing in the trees, just watching me. And the laughter, it's always there, even when I'm inside." Mrs. Miller felt a chill run down her spine. She had dismissed Tom's earlier claims as childish fears, but now she wasn't so sure. There had been moments, late at night, when she thought she heard something, too faint laughter, drifting through the house like a cold breeze. "I'll talk to your father about it," she said, squeezing Tom's hand. "Maybe we can look around the woods tomorrow, see if we can find anything." Tom nodded, feeling a small sense of relief. At least now his parents were taking him seriously. But deep down, he knew that whatever was out there, it wouldn't be easy to find or to get rid of. The next day, Mr. Miller and Tom ventured into the woods together, armed with flashlights and a sense of determination. They followed the path that led,